Hi everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Pitch Room Africa. So our guest today is not someone who is a stranger. As a matter of fact, he actually was in season one of the Pitch Room Africa. We are happy and excited to be having him return to us today for a rather tough conversation as always. Uwem, welcome. How are you doing?
Thank you, Siri. Thank you, Esther. I'm glad to be here. And no, let's not make it a tough conversation.
I mean, it's a unique selling point. And as an investor, if I'm selling to you, I need to say that's what is unique about our conversation, right? It's not only about what we're building, it's about being honest and being fair. Let's use the word fair. Let's not say tough, but a fair conversation.
All right, let's get right into it.
I mean, what have you been up to, man? You've been traveling all around. Like, what have you been up to?
Work, try to live in between the work, engaging founders, engaging ecosystem players, and just trying to leave as much value as I can. Because again, that's part of my mantra. My goal in life, or my mantra, which I sort of stole from my wife, is because she puts it best, is living, adding value to at least one person in every engagement, right? So at every touch point with anybody that I meet, I have to leave some form of value with them.
So you're back in the UK today, correct?
Yes.
From the start of this year to now, how many countries have you been to? How many places have you been?
Wow. I've
You've been
I've
all
I've
around.
I've been all around, and I'm also grateful that I can live this kind of life. Sometimes it's stressful, sometimes it's very rewarding. But I've been to New York, I've been to Botswana, Morocco, South Africa. That's Joburg and Cape Town. I've been to a couple of places. I've been to, and then within London, Cambridge, Oxford. It's been a very busy period.
Does it come with a job?
It does come with the job. So what I've always done in my career, and we probably we'll talk about my career over time, is I've always done jobs that are tied to my personal aspirations. And oftentimes there is some sort of convergence that you find that while I'm doing the things that I love to do personally, elements of the job is always there. So you would say maybe I'm invited to speak at a founder event, but I'm going there as me because it was me as a personal brand I was invited. But then that's also an opportunity for me to talk about Launch Africa, what we do on the continent, but also build a pipeline of great founders for the fund. So in the end, I've been fortunate enough to be able to build a career where there is a convergence between my personal interests and that of my job.
It's not common. Some people find it very difficult in their jobs because there's no personal interest. It's just work as usual. So when that's a very beautiful sweet spot, I can relate because that's where I am. I'm sure that's where City is as well. So well done. But I have a question that kind of like tilts a little bit backwards to your journey. Before you became an investor, were you always going to be an investor? Or did you know? Yeah.
Yeah.
The journey before that.
It's an interesting question. There is a saying that I read recently that goes thus: purpose is not a goal. Purpose is found in doing. Right. And I've realized that my life has been all about doing. I say something, and sometimes my wife, again, I'll mention her so many times, is that she says don't talk like that, right? I might not be the smartest person in the room, but I'll be the most consistent and dogged person. So I'll keep on going and going and going and trying to solve the problem. That in the end, and that's what success is. Success is about people that outlast the other people. And that's how I see my life. I will outlast everybody. I'm going to do the work to outlast every other relevant person in the field. And so that's how my journey generally has been like that. I didn't know I was going to get enter into VC. I'm an electrical engineer by training. I'm an engineer. And I thought I was going to be a practicing engineer. Growing up, my parents used to beat me a lot because I would unscrew brand new TV and remove everything inside and put it back. Everything they bought, my father would buy me a Walkman, I would unscrew it. I had Game Boy, I unscrewed my Game Boy. I couldn't put it back. My father was so upset. So I was always that person that I was very inquisitive. And maybe in the end, it was about my inquisitiveness, but I thought I was going to be a practicing engineer. And I studied electrical engineering in one of top schools in Nigeria. But right around my year 5, reality began to dawn that, actually my year 4, reality began to dawn that by virtue of the country that I was living in, I probably will never be able to practice my electrical engineering degree or use it to any effect. And at that time, we used to have a tech week in school. So I was part of one of the organizers, and that sort of brought me into what was the next phase of my life, which was organizing community of people, like-minded people. So we organized the tech week. We did some of the most outrageous things during the tech week, and everybody loved it. And so graduating from school, I found out that I sort of did a slight pivot into IT, because again, that's what most people that do engineering degrees, they move into IT. I was fortunate enough, again, there's a long story there, to work for one of the richest men in Nigeria, Tony Elumelu. And at that time, I was just an IT guy, fix the projector, project manage release of an enterprise solution in-house, migrate from Google to Microsoft. It was just, typical IT job. But one day I hit sort of what I call an inflection point where, and which is why I'm going to go to another point about having sponsors within the organization, where I just got called into a room and he says, you know what, people ask me for a lot of money. We need to build out a structure in the way I give out money based on the conversation I've been having with a couple of people, one of them who turned out to be my mentor in the organization. I'm going to start an entrepreneurship program. You're going to handle this. You're going to handle this. Me and then my land manager then we're told to handle the tech infrastructure. And the way it works with this man is that he just gives you a goal and says, figure it out. Your deadline is in 1 month. And we all look at ourselves like, how? From where to where? But it was very audacious. And at that time, we didn't even think we could achieve it. We're going to build an entrepreneurship program, a $100 million endowment fund towards training, funding, mentoring entrepreneurs. These are the goals. These are the things I want to achieve. You people go figure it out. It's going to launch in 1 month. How do you do that to a couple of people that some of them have never even built an entrepreneurship program? But with sleepless nights and stuff, we pulled it off. Even on the day where we launched the program, the portal crashed. And it's one of my lessons from IT, right? That things might go back behind the scene, but the customers must never experience it. Everybody was out there shouting congratulations. We were sweating, at the back because the portal had crashed. People could not find their names. It was just a mess. But we eventually launched it, and that is what. And this year we're going to be celebrating 10 years of the program. And I ran the tech side for a couple of months, and then again one day I'm called into a room, large meeting. The HR is there. So let me just take a step back. So prior to that, I was already organizing communities of founders. And for those that were very active in the Lagos entrepreneurship system in 2014, 2013, 2015, you have heard of Startup Grind Lagos. So we're really organizing the events. We had monthly meetups with founders, and we had one cardinal rule at those events. You come ready to share your failure stories. So we used to talk about failures, struggles, challenges, because for the life of me, I don't know why Nigerians and Africans in extension never talk about what it takes to be a success. You ask them and they say it's God. Please, which God came down to work with you? And I see this everywhere. I remember when symposium with Dangote, they asked Dangote, we know you got some seed capital from your uncle, blah, 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 blah. But how have you been able to build such a big brand and a big company? And he says, well, it's all due to God. And I wanted to tear my hair out because I was like, these are very young people listening to you, and all you're saying is God, when in reality, it is not God. Well, I mean, God plays a part in our lives, but you actually did certain things. You actually put in the work, right? No, God, there's no supreme being or superior being that would come and magnify work that you did not put in, right? There has to be something that somebody comes to bless. And so that was always our drive for building the communities that we're building, I and my partner. And it was a success because we spread out to other states. We even spread out to, I think, Ghana and Togo before we left. So I was very active in my personal capacity with building communities of founders and entrepreneurs. But then I'm called into this room and I'm told, and then there's Tony Elumelu, there is Paminda Ver, who was the CEO of the foundation, who ended up being my internal sponsor, the HR, so many other people. And she says, we see what you've been doing in your personal capacity. A role has opened up within the firm for you to lead the program. We think you're the best person to lead it. And then Tony Elumelu turns to me and says, tell me why you're fit for the job. I've never been so awkward in my life, because how do you go from IT guy to come and lead a program that is basically $100 million endowment? No, I wouldn't say no prior skill, because in the end, everything I was doing in the past brought me up to this day, which is how I said purpose is found in doing. And so I'm seated there, I stammer through it, and I don't even recall the conversation, and they say thank you, and I leave. The next day I get an offer letter to lead the program. So that's kind of puts me on the path to where I am today. So I led that program for 5 years, and on the 5th year we had trained, mentored, and funded 10,000 entrepreneurs, which was even our 10-year goal. Our 10-year goal was 10,000 entrepreneurs. We hit it in 5 years. At that 5th year, I began to feel like there was more we could do, because if you, like both of you know already, when you work with founders across the continent, you realize that money is just a subset of the problems that exist. Obviously, money is very important, but when you get the money, you realize that you need to hire, you need to build an organizational structure, you need to figure out business development, you need to build a brand, so many things. You begin to realize that there's so many problems with building on the continent. And I felt like there was so much more I could be doing. And so I actually left that job without a plan. I was like, no, if I keep on, the job was comfortable. And my thinking was that if I wait till I'm ready, I will probably never leave. Because I remember prior to that, I'd resigned and they sent my resignation letter back to me to say, sorry, you're joking. Instead, they just increased my salary. So I left without a plan. But then I got in contact with somebody who had at one of our community events and said, I noticed that you have left. How about you come join my fund, because we're trying to do XYZ. We're trying to build a non-profit, but we're also trying to build the venture capital arm. And so I joined the venture capital arm, led it for a couple of years, and then also left again when I thought that I'd given the most to the job. And then now I'm in Launch Africa. So in the end, just because I was supposed to tell the backstory, you find out that everything I've done in the past sort of led me to this person that I am today. And I don't know what I'll be in the next 10 years. I just know that I'm just going to keep on chopping the block and doing till I get to where I'm ultimately, again, my goal in life is to be free. Freedom to do anything I want to do. I want to be able to wake up today and say, I want to go to Russia. I won't go to Russia, but I want to go to Russia, and I can go to Russia and do the things I like to do and still, impact people I want to impact. I still make money, because in the end, money is very important. But yeah.
So in all of that backstory, who is Uwem?
That's a very good question. I would say, think of me as the bridge or the connector between founders that are looking to raise money and build impactful businesses on the continent, and investors that are looking to maximize the return on their investments on the continent. So I'm that guy in the center that links the two together and also creates value for those two parts of the value chain.
All right. So that's the professional response. So let's talk about the personal side.
Mm.
Who is Uwem? Like, who is Uwem? Who would your friends say you are? Like, who are you? Who do you think you are?
It's an interesting question because the reality is I'm different things to different people. And that's it. Everybody's different things to different people. Well, you must, at least there's a bit of consistency across the board, but you find that who you are to your wife or your girlfriend or your boyfriend is different from who you are to your best friend, different from who you are to the whole world. And oftentimes I oftentimes see myself based on the circle of influence that I have. I can be very private. I'm a very private person, but I invest in those that I think I want to be part of their journey, and those that I think that can help in their journey. So who am I? I'm that person that loves to help people get to where they want to be, because fundamentally I believe that the journey is sweeter when all of us succeed. That's one of my mantra. It's not fun when it's just only you. It's fun when everybody succeeds and all of you sort of, when you look back, you can pinpoint how each of you were involved in each other's story. I can be very quiet, but I can be in short, I'm actually a very big introvert, but people don't believe. But when I have to do the job and I have to be out there, I tend to be out there. But to drag me out of my house would take a lot, because I'd rather stay at home and watch TV with my wife or play game. And then I don't know. I think the best measure of who anybody is to ask their friends. So maybe ask my friends who I am.
Okay. So, I mean, for those of us who know you, we know you as the mayor of London. So, but Owen, you mentioned a lot about being the bridge between investors and founders. I think there's not in any of the journey, in any of the years that we've actually transcended. I think today, right now, is the most important period to be in that bridge is now. How is that working out?
It's given the global economic, crisis, if I should term it that way, and the macroeconomic conditions of various countries on the continent, it's been quite tough. But the question I oftentimes ask myself is, do you want to be actively involved or investing when everything is good? Or do you want to be at the forefront when things are looking bad? And for those that are active in the investment space, you find out that you get the most returns when you are early, before anybody's looking at it, when you're investing, when things are down. Sure, Warren Buffett will tell you that if a stock is high, then you're too late, right? So what I always tell people is buy the stocks of Africa early, when it's down, when everybody's like, what exactly is happening here? And the reality is Africa as a continent, and I'm going to use that, again, Africa is not a country, but Africa as a continent is still very early days, right? We are barely out of the industrialization phase. Barely. Countries have gone, but countries are, we've gone from digital to AI. We're still catching up. The content is very young. So the opportunities are bound, and we are bound to go through all those dips and highs, because that's what growth is. We have all the necessary indices to be a very successful continent, from natural resources to human capital. The population of Africa by 2050 would be, half of the world's, right? We have really, really smart people. Everywhere I travel, I run into an Africa that is doing amazing things. So if you look at all the indices that were required for, say, a China, a United States, and Europe for them to be successful, everything exists on the continent. What we just need to do is have more deliberate and concerted effort as a people to actually make it work. And this involves us not working in silos. not having a Nigerian strategy, not having a South African strategy, it is more of having an African strategy. How do we all come together? And to be honest, people have attempted to do it over the years. It just hasn't worked it's not moving as fast as we want it. From the AFT-CFA to, the African Union, there are efforts to make that happen, but we can do better. And I think that, and this is my message, is for the younger generation. The times of our parents have passed. We are the future leaders that we've been talking about, future leaders years ago. We need to take the bull by the horn. We need to start making things happen. To travel to Botswana, you would have to hop on several planes. So say, for example, I want to travel from Lagos to Botswana. There's no direct flight. I have to travel from Lagos to Joburg to Botswana. In some cases, I have to travel from Lagos to London to Botswana. To South Africa, that's Joburg to Botswana. If I want to travel from Lagos to Senegal, sometimes there is no direct flight. I have to go from Lagos to Spain to Senegal. So just within the continent, there's so many arbitrary borders that we should pull down. There's so many problems that we can solve for ourselves. And as we get into the positions of power, as we begin to have influence as young people, in quotes, we need to start tearing down these borders, because the continent will never be great without us doing all these things and deciding to make the change that we've all complained about. So Africa is very young and the potential is endless. And let's start buying the stocks now.
So I'm just going to do a follow-up before Esther comes in. So one of the things you mentioned is that let's start pulling the stops. And today, as a matter of fact, we are currently in a period wherein every year, this period up until October is filled with so many conferences, so many conversations, which are great. You've been in a lot of those yourself. Tell me what is your experience, but also what is the significance of these conferences and what are the clear outputs?
If I'm going to be real with you,
I hope that that's what we're having.
Oh no. I've attended so many conferences from this year to last year to the years before, and unfortunately, initially, it was all the whole trope of Africa Rising, which was great. We wanted to tell a better story about Africa. We wanted to show that Africa is emerging, it's an emerging market, and there's so much more to expect. We wanted to showcase the talent. We wanted to showcase the great businesses. But unfortunately, in trying to do that, what we've now done is build events that are all similar faces, similar people on stage, similar stories. And unfortunately, we're not capturing the diversity of what Africa is. Africa is 54 countries, very diverse cultures, very diverse people, very diverse businesses, very diverse perspective and very diverse realities, right? Life in Nairobi, Kenya is totally different from life in Abidjan, Cote d'Ivoire. Totally different, right? And unfortunately, what happened is, while we are trying to tell this story, we've just amplified a small section of what Africa is. And this is not, again, it's still part of where we are at Africa. I think we're still figuring out things. So there is so much more we can do with events like this. Again, events are about storytelling. It's about, spotlighting the people that are doing the real work, and not just the popular people that are actually actively, pulling up their sleeves and getting their hands dirty. But it has become more of PR events, the same people. Obviously people pay for these things. Again, some of these event companies have to make money. They're running a business. But I feel like there's so much more that can be done for events, and better curation for the events. For me, what happens now is I've gotten to a stage in my life where I sort of can discern what events I want to be at and decide which one brings the most value to me, because maybe a couple of people are going to be there, based on either my personal interest or the goal of the fund that I run. But to your question, I think that there's so much we can do better with events. I think we can curate them better. I also think that And I see some of these events where you take the best of the best in Africa and you go do an event in Germany. Or sometimes I wonder what our African presidents are thinking, right? You're doing a coalition event on Africa and you're doing it in Sweden. I've never understood the rationale. Obviously, what happens is whoever pays the piper dictates the tone, right, or the tune, which is unfortunately what's happening in Africa. The person that is bringing the money oftentimes determines how the events go. But we should be doing more of these high-powered events on the continent. If it's for Africa, it should be in Africa.
But what is the significant outcome? So let's.
I'm coming there. I'm getting there. Again, at that first, when we started when the whole Africa Rising started, Ghana being at the forefront, then Nigeria, and then Kenya. We saw tourism improved. More people were coming to this, into Africa. We saw that there was a lot of investment in the VC space because, frankly, investment is about storytelling. It's about convincing people, and sometimes it's not about convincing people in their head. It's about their hearts, telling them that this is how bad things are, but it could be better, and we're appealing to your own good judgments to come and give us money. In Nigeria, we joke about and say it's Bambiala. That's begging. But that's what it is, right? And those stories oftentimes at that time was very effective and it worked. But we've gotten to a stage where we as a continent have to step back and ask ourselves, for the amount of effort we are putting in all these events, what were the outcomes? So I think that we need to look at the events and ask ourselves the tough questions. Did it achieve the goals that we wanted it to achieve when we set out to build out these events many years ago? The whole Africa Rising narrative, did it work? If it did, what were the outcomes? How has it benefited us long term? And then look at, and if no, what can we change with the event in terms of formatting, in terms of diversity, in terms of content? What can we change? And I can tell you for a fact that no, it worked for a time, but now it's not working again. So what can we do to break that narrative, change the narrative, be more diverse, put in more content that people would, benefit from? Like, remember when I started earlier, when you're talking to, entrepreneurs that have done, or people that have done great on the content, you're asking them, how do we get them to tell their real stories? Obviously, I know that sometimes people don't want to say everything because regulators can come after them, or, but we need to move past that thing where if I share, they'll steal my business, or they'll steal my idea. Because reality is, it is not about the ideas, it's about execution. But all three of us can have the same idea, and three of us will execute it in totally different ways.
Yeah.
And if you're not talking, if you're not sharing, nobody can actually support or help you the way they can if people don't know what your problems are. So we need more transparency in the ecosystem. We need more people be open to sharing their stories. We need more of the people that are down there doing the dirty work also speaking. So one of the things I've noticed is the guys that do great work would rather not be at events, would rather just keep on doing the work because they are driven by their passion to give value, or they are driven by what led them to build their businesses. But with this, and this is a message to founders, you have to strike a fine balance between doing the work and also talking the work. If you're not talking about your work, nobody will know you exist, and your helper, like we say in African terms, will just ignore you. So yeah.
Okay, I think a little bit critical. One event that you've attended this year so far, and what was like the direct outcome? It could be like the best event that you attended this year, but what is the direct? Because here's the thing, right? About 80% of the people that actually attend these events or receive invitation to attend these events are investors.
Mm-hmm.
So, like you said, majority of the conversation is saturated around the African investment community, or like the big players or the people that are shouting and screaming at the top of their, right? But what is the value of this event to the grassroots entrepreneurs and the ecosystem where these events are happening? Like, what is the direct value?
So let's take a step back for events. Remember how I said that I like to curate events, the kind of events that I go to. I think that one of the best ones that I've gone to, well, coincidentally happened in New York at Yale, was the one organized by the Yale Africa Startup Review. And what I loved about it was how rich the conversation was. So basically, what you had was Yale alumni who are all diasporans. So, Africans that are emigrated there, schooling there, some are staying back, some are building for the continent. It was all conversation on how they can best support the ecosystem, how they can best support founders, or how they can even build businesses that would help the continent. And the conversations were rich because we had Yale alumni, like the former head of the Central Bank of Kenya was there. And he was very honest. Like, sometimes I wish people in authority in Africa can be that honest. He was honest about the challenges he experienced in running the Central Bank of Kenya. He talked about how how startups see regulators, and unfortunately how regulators see startups, and talked about how well both parties can work together. So it was a very rich conversation. We had alumni that were running businesses on the continent also share their experience. So again, it's about the diversity of conversation. And it wasn't just people from one side of the continent. It was very, very, very diverse people. And I liked that because one, it was a mixture of very young people and older folks. It was a mixture of people from various sectors. There was very good representation. So whether Francophone Africa and Anglophone Africa, and South Africa, it was and North Africa particularly, it was people really engaged. It wasn't, how you go for events and you have cliques of people talk to different. This one was just buzzing because everybody was talking to everybody. There wasn't, this is a senior guy in the ecosystem, so he doesn't talk to people like, we know how it is sometimes. So I really like that event. But all the events that I have, or most of the events that I've managed to attend, all of them have been really, really great. And I attend events for, again, the various purposes. Sometimes I attend because I'm like trying to build deal flow for the fund. Sometimes I personally want to meet certain people because I think that I can add value to them, or I can also get value from them. So for diversity, content, conversations. I mean, I love conversations. I would pick that Yale Africa Startup Review event in New York, which was really great. Actually, was it in New York? Where is it? Where is Yale? Where is Yale? Anyways, Sha, in the US.
Anyways, you talked about deal flow. So I think one of the within the investment network, a lot of the investors are risk averse now, way more risk averse than where they were last year and the year prior. So which then means that investment and the way investors look at investing in companies have changed a little bit. But I can also see. But before we get into that, let me start off with. You've done, how many deals have you done this year? Because I've been seeing a lot of exciting investment. How many deals have you done this year?
From our fund 2, at least, we've done, if my math is correct, 7 deals this year.
7 deals. And what is
actually, yeah, 7 deals. From the fund 2, we've done 15. So between August last year and now, we've done 15 deals.
What is the stages?
It's quite it's a diverse, so a multi-stage, multi-sector fund. And for me, as the head of investments, my goal is to build out a portfolio that is diverse in terms of geographical representation, that is diverse in terms of sector representation, that is diverse across the various stages of growth for the founders. So we have deals from the pre-seed to pre-series A across Nigeria, Rwanda, South Africa, South Africa, Morocco.
Just out of curiosity, what is the number of female founders that made up that 15 so far?
That's a very interesting question. So when we talk about female representation, the way we capture it at the fund is to look at is there a female co-founder, or do we have female representation in the management team of the company? And as at now, we have about 30% representation. It could be better. It should be better, and this is something that we're actively working on. Just yesterday, I was at a IFC co-creation workshop that was talking about how do we increase the amount of venture funding going into female-backed businesses, and even the female-focused funds sometimes struggle to invest in, solely female-led businesses.
Why?
It's a deal flow thing, and sometimes it's also as a result of the systematic cultural issues that have existed, right? So let's take some step back to when I was running the accelerator, the Tony Elumelu Entrepreneurship Programme. We would do a call for application, and guess what? More men will apply. We would say, okay, we want to just target female women, and guess what? Men will apply as women. And it was always insane. Sometimes we'll start the program and then women will come back to us and say, unfortunately, I can't continue with the program because taking care of my husband, taking care of my child is too hard. Or my husband kicked against it, which sometimes was very annoying. Not annoying for me, I'm not annoyed at the woman, I'm annoyed at the situations that they find themselves, because culturally you find that while we ask so much from women, sometimes we don't allow them the grace to be in certain spaces to be what they ought to be. And then you find that educationally, actually just men are thought to be upfront, to be go-getters, to aspire to be the best, and then women are somewhat taught to care for everybody and not to over dream. And you see that reflective.
Don't you think, as part of even in the investment game itself, I think we spoke about this last year, is the fact that women in the ecosystem are much more reserved. They're not a lot as forward as their counterparts, so they're not there in their voices and things like that. And here and I actually talked about the laziness of some of the VCs to actually get into.
Absolutely. I agree with you. I think VCs on the continent can do way better. And this is on both sides.
What is stopping them from doing that better? Because
I'm going to try to be very empathetic here. I'd say that running a VC fund on the continent is hard, because first of all, you have to raise money. I'm getting there.
Building is
you struggle to raise money, right? And then how do VCs run operations? You take 2% of management fee. So if you manage to raise a $5 million fund or a $10 million fund, how much is your management fee? You will now have to either be the sole GP, or you will have to recruit people to be on your team who you pay salaries. So in the end, the economics for running a fund on the continent can be very small, and oftentimes VCs or funds get more, how do I put it now? The returns get more reasonable when you raise bigger funds. So you're talking 100 million and all, then you have more money to play. But most funds on the continent are small. That's me being empathetic. But it's not also saying that those people that lead these funds can do way better. We oftentimes work on FOMO. So everybody invests in that guy that is already out there. We pattern match a lot, which is a problem. So did he go to school in the US or the UK? Yes. Can he speak very well? Yes. Did he go, when I traveled the other day and I was in business class, I saw this person in business. So that means he must know what he's doing. Yes. And so you pattern match and neglect the people that are actually doing the dirty work. Because these people can tell a better story, because people can brand themselves better, doesn't mean that they are better than the other people that are more reserved, like you've mentioned, and aren't out there. So yes, VCs can do a way better job with deal flow and with going into the ecosystem and finding the people that are doing the work. I've been in scenarios where VCs reject people because they typo in the deck, and I'm looking at the other people and I'm like, but this business makes sense. Well, you're not saying, well, because there's no attention to detail in the deck, it doesn't mean it means this person will be able to lead their business. So sometimes there are biases. And I remember one time I was talking to Kola on a ventures platform, and he said, yes, that he realizes that he does have biases. And that's why you need a strong team of people who you listen to. That when they tell you, oh God, this is a bias, so this business will most likely succeed or can succeed or has potential to succeed because XYZ, XYZ. You then listen and say, oh, that's true. And you catch yourself and say, yeah, maybe I had a bias. And the thing about biases is that sometimes it rears its head without you even knowing. It could be from your experience, it could be something that you were brought up with. And that's why it is really, really great to have a solid team that you trust around you that can call you out on your biases. So yes, VCs need to do better, investors on the continent. And it's not just VCs, all these people that deploy grants, people that deploy loans have to do better on the continent. However, on the other hand, we have to be very empathetic because it is not easy building out funds on the continent. And as such, people then optimize for the easier route. So they rather invest in people that other people have invested in, so they don't have to do too much work. But yes, we need to do better.
So let's talk about doing better. So there's an increase in the number of female GPs, which is good. Number of female fund even in the private equity space, which is also great. But I think the recognition of the fact that FOMO pattern matching has been a big problem, especially in how we used to invest in previous years. Is also there is recognizable problem, but now that has changed a little bit, right? What are the technical changes that have happened today in investment, and what should startups that are currently in the market be actively looking at? Like, I want to get into I don't want to just talk about the smoke screen, because I have a few startups that are raising, right? And most of the decks that I'm seeing and most of the conversations that I'm seeing when I'm talking to startup, whether it's advising them, they are pretty much doing the same format as though they were in 2023 and the previous years, but that have changed a lot. So what is the technical changes that you're seeing? Let's use your thesis for a case study.
So everybody has gone back, or most people have gone back to the business fundamentals.
But what does that mean?
I'm getting there. Is the business even making money at all? Back in the days, people would pitch to you and say, you know what, if you invest in me, in 1 year's time, I'll be able to generate X thousand in revenue. But are you actually generating anything right now? Do you have a proof of concept out there? Or you're just raising based on an idea? Are you working with a team? And I understand that at that very early stage, building a team is hard, but even if they are part-time, they're still a team. Are you working with team with complementary skills? And the core word here is complementary. What you see is very early stage founders like to fill up their team with people like them. Same behavior, same attitude, same competence. But in the end, to build a team, you need people who fit together, right? Who help you fill the square holes with, square pegs, who complement you, who fill your blind spots. And then sometimes we look at, has this person, as the founder, even gone through an accelerator and incubators? People underestimate the power of going through an accelerator incubator because there's so much that you end up learning. I know it comes at a cost to the business generally. Maybe you lose some ownership and people sometimes pay. I personally do not like accelerators or incubators that force people to pay for them. I understand that that's part of their business model. But have you gone through an accelerator incubator so that you understand the basics of business governance, of structuring your team and all that? And you as the founder, do you actually have experience in the space that you're building in? For goodness sake, because you experience a problem does not mean that 100 people around you experience the same problem. does not mean that you're the person to solve the problem. How many years have you worked in the industry? Even if you've not worked in the industry, how much research have you done into what you're trying to build? Because sometimes you ask some founders some basic questions on the problem they are solving, and you see that they are lost. And then they start to sell you dreams and skyscrapers in the sky. And sometimes you can tell from the first 10 seconds, you'll be like, ugh, this person is trying to faff. And then let's not forget that pitching is storytelling, right? Is it coherent? Is the story coherent? I open some pitch deck and you're putting 30 pages. Who has time to read 30 pages of a pitch deck? And then the first page is big screen logo. Second page is our mission. You've lost me. Let's go back to the basics. What problem are you solving? What solution are you building? Why are you the one to build it? What is the size of the market? What is your business model? Here is the team. This is how much we're raising, and this is how we're going to use it. Simple. You know, one of the hardest things to do is to keep things simple, especially when you have so much to tell. But in the end, it is simplicity that oftentimes wins. The goal of a pitch deck is not actually to score an investment. It's to actually interest the other party enough to want to speak to you further. So when you make your pitch deck like a dissertation, nobody's going to call you back, because let's put yourself in investor's shoes. Okay. I launch Africa by a high volume fund. So every week, I probably will receive at least 2 decks, at least. And this is not to add to the backlog of decks that are there. And then people reaching out to you, say, have you seen this startup? Or I'm building a startup now, come and review. So imagine how many decks I have to look through. And then you're making me do the work of having to go to page 10 to get a sense of what you're building. You've lost most people. So, which is why they will tell you, can you explain your business to your grandma and she will understand it? You sure that's a litmus test. If you cannot explain what you're doing, especially if it's not a deep tech or, like DNA sequencing or generative AI. By the way, most people that are saying they're building AI for this, AI for that is rubbish. They're not building any AI for anything. But, except it's like proper deep tech, your grandmother should understand what you're building if you explain it to her. Because how would the customer, if you cannot explain to your grandma, how will your customers understand what you're building? How will the investors understand what you're building? Because don't forget that oftentimes you have between 15 and 30 seconds to generate interest from anybody, be it your customer, be your investor, and the likes. If you cannot do that, and that's why they call that thing the elevator pitch, right? If you cannot score down your elevator pitch in a way that interests people, you've probably lost them. So to the side of the investors, and again, I'll talk about me personally because I don't want to talk about everybody. What I'm doing is, one, I'm also giving founders the grace to know that not all of them are perfect. Not everybody will have the same, not everybody will be able to pitch well, not everybody will be able to speak, authoritatively. Not everybody would have the best skills at networking. So sometimes I have to go to where the founders are. Sometimes I have to be more patient to listen to what they are saying and what they are not saying. Sometimes I'm oftentimes asking questions to guide them to share exactly what they are building. And then I'm also looking at getting closer to one founders, because I think founders are the best referrals of great deals. You oftentimes find that founders will know their fellow founders that are building great stuff. Getting closer to accelerators and incubators, because you find that even for accelerators and incubators, they can't accept everybody, and sometimes they turn back really great companies. So that, and then I'm also just trying to add as much value. Whether I invest in you or not, I would actually give you a feedback. If you send me your deck to me, I would always give you at least one feedback to say, oh man, I think your deck is too worthy. Or I've seen this particular solution in 10 other decks. You need to refine your solution, something like that. But again, it takes on both sides of the divide, we also need to work hard because times have changed. We are not in the zero interest rates period of the 2020s, 2021, where cash was just flowing. And unfortunately, as an ecosystem, I would say that a number of founders wasted that free cash because most of their businesses are struggling right now. There isn't that much money to throw around now. What people know, we're now asking people to do great things with very little. Meanwhile, before we're telling people to do little with great things, with great amount of cash. So things have changed. But the reality is, if you can build a business right now when things look bad, where, say, for example, we're having devaluation in Nigeria, in Kenya, the currency is also struggling, in Egypt, the same thing. If you can build a great business now, when things get better, you're going to scale very well. So this is the best time to build. This is also the best time to fail fast. It's not, I know many people don't want to hear this, but this is the best time to fail fast. If you're going to fail, better fail and move on to the next thing. Remember how I said, because again, businesses are problem-solving machines. If the problem you're trying to solve and the solution you're trying to prefer don't match, then you shouldn't be doing business. You should be moving on to something else. There's something Olumide Soyombo used to say: because a problem exists doesn't mean that there's a market in that problem, right? So if you have looked and it's not working, please pivot fast. Move on to the next thing. You cannot persistently work on something that is not working. And I agree that sometimes in some cases you might be too early. It might be just that you need more time to work at the problem, to solve it. But for a lot of people, yes, a lot of people, you just have to pivot to something else. So yeah, that's basically it.
Okay, so in terms of, so I know you've talked about the storytelling and all of that, but when you actually sit down on a technical level, you've gone past the beautiful deck and all of that, like the business fundamentals. You're talking about revenue and things like that, but given the stages startups usually are, given like let's talk about pre-seed stage, like what are the things that you look out for more particularly outside of just the deck? What are what really matters today?
It's a combination of things. So you find out that based on the fund's thesis or the investor's thesis, they look at different things. Sometimes I go as far as Googling you and saying, if you say that you're an expert in this field, how much do you even talk about it? How many times have you written an article? How many times have you interfaced in an article that talks about this problem you're trying to solve? Do you even have an online presence? But you find that at the end of the day, most investors are looking for traction. Now, traction could be anything to anybody. It could be a wait list. I'm not a fan of wait lists because, I mean, it's about converting. You can have a wait list of 1,000 people and you can only convert only 5%, which is even good. It could be the number of partners you've signed up before you've even launched. It could be how much you've been able to raise personally from your family and friends. It could be how many people are interacting with your POC, your proof of concept, or your MVP. So at the end of the day, traction means different things to different people. And for different types of businesses, traction could be anything. But everybody's looking for some indicator of growth that they can base their risk on. The important thing is to show that this is what I'm doing, or this is where I am. If you inject cash, you can catalyze growth from here to here. So it's about traction.
Okay.
Owen, I've been listening. Sidi, I'd like to ask a question. He said a couple of things, as in, I was trying to write, but I think I'll have to watch this again to be able to take more notes. So, two things actually I want to say. Are you saying there are founders that are not, there are founders that don't like to put their thing, that don't like to come out, that don't like to be on social media. They like to build in hiding. They don't even talk about what they're building. They rather have people go in front and do the whole noise and marketing for them, but they like their space. They just want to build. And they don't have any social media presence. And are you saying that those kinds of founders will not be an easy, won't have easy investment? I'm saying so because I also know seller Kendison. He wasn't always online, right? But it was when he had made so much traction, he began to put a face to the brand, right? So, and he knew the importance of coming out. At that point, if someone was judging a Kendison, it won't be fair. It won't be a fair way to judge him. So I'm just asking for balance. Is it possible that there could be founders who are doing great work but are not on social media, are not even talking about it other than their website and pitch decks and the passion and all of that? What would be the word for those founders in these times? And would investors actually just turn these guys down because, they're not actually out there?
So out there could mean different things. It doesn't have to be social media. But if you're not actively selling yourself or selling your business, who would know you exist? Again, you mentioned the seller founder. How did they find him? He had a deck. Somebody shared the deck to somebody. Exactly. Nobody just stumbles on your product. It does happen and be like, oh, I want to invest in this guy. Somebody will ask a friend or a friend, which is one of the reasons why I always tell people build a very strong network around you. Because oftentimes the best things come by referral. Oh, I know this guy that's building this. I know he's not that popular, but you should check him out. But if people don't believe in what you're building, if you've not built that great community around you, nobody's going to actually do that for you. So remember how initially I said that you have to find a way to strike a balance, right, of doing the work, but also talking about your work. Guess what? He's not everywhere selling his brand, because in the end, you realize that you have to hawk your product on your head, literally, for people to see that you exist, especially in these times. Now, if we take this conversation more advanced, you find out that there's a stage where you also, as a founder, have to disassociate yourself with the brand. You don't want, and again, everybody has different strategies. Sometimes the brand is you, and it's from the brand that it feeds off to other businesses. You have the Elon Musk of this world. Elon Musk is a brand. He's a brand on his own, right? And because of his brand, many of his other sub-brands are doing very well. But for some other people, they don't like to be out there. So they are actively building the brand of their company so that they can shy away from the complexities and the troubles with building their businesses. When customers are hounding you on social media, they won't come to you. They'll go straight to the... So again, that's a whole conversation, a different conversation on building a brand that works. But in the end, if you are not actively telling your story, in short, there's something I heard the other day. The storyteller is the most powerful person in the world. So if you're not actively telling your story and showing people why they should listen to you, or generating enough interest for them to listen to you or invest in your business, you're doing yourself a whole disservice. And you're allowing people that don't know how to do the work, that don't know nothing, to actually succeed, and eventually to succeed in the sense that everybody knows about them, and it's eventually hurt the ecosystem. And then tomorrow you find us in small gatherings and you'll be complaining, can you imagine? This guy, he doesn't even know his business. Look at what has happened. But you didn't do the work. You were not talking about your work. Right. So in the end, founders need to find a balance. Nobody will find you if you are not findable, if you're not in the right networks, if you're not telling the right story, if you're not at least once in a while publishing something. Some people have gotten opportunities by just Googling, who I'm coming to Nigeria, who should I speak with? And then some names pop up. So if you're not doing all that, don't be annoyed and don't complain when the opportunities end up going to people that are doing it. Because we are in a world where you are in a world that is driven very much by what happens on the online and happens in closed circles. Remember how earlier I talked about my career and said a sponsor within the organization pitched me, right? Or talked about me. Guess what? When I was doing my activities on the side, sometimes there was a time how she knew about it was I invited her. If I did not invite her, if I didn't try to sell the community to her, she probably would never have known that, man, this guy can do this. and by extension can lead this program. So in a way, you have to learn to find a balance. It's not the most easy thing to do. It's not the most fun thing to do, honestly, but you have to do it. A simple thing is, I was telling a founder yesterday that I met, I said, there are so many events. Curate the event you want to go to. Identify who are the top 3 people. Actually, it's a trick I do. Who are the top 3 people I want to talk to? Get there very early. Be in front. Speak to those people. Take pictures and disappear. Nobody will know you have gone home, but you have done the work. Yes. So before you attend events, before you do anything, ask yourself, what do I want to achieve from this? As you're building this business, what do you want to achieve from it? If fundraising is part of your goals, you need to do a couple of things that will help you be out there that people will see. If you're not doing those things, then you can't complain. You can't always, let's move away from this victim mentality. Oh my God, only just these few people are getting funding. But they are doing something that obviously gets them in the spaces that get the funding. I know that sometimes life is unfair, that sometimes they get the most opportunities, but you also have to do something to put yourself in those situations or those positions. I'll end this finally. Many years ago, when I used to work for the wealthy man that I mentioned, he owns a hotel in Abuja. And there's a story of a guy that will walk into the restaurant, because that hotel used to be, frequented by politicians, really rich people that were trying to come and strike deal in Abuja, which is the capital of Nigeria. And this guy will go by, he would dress with his agbada. Agbada is this, no, I think it was agbada of Senegalese, but really this really big, you know how the dress is now. And then you sit down and buy just a bottle of Coke. And I think back then, a bottle of Coke, then that restaurant used to be 2,000 naira. And that time Coke was 20 naira. So that's like very expensive. But you buy it so you can be sipping it. But apparently what he was doing was, one, the more people saw him around in the restaurant, more people assumed that he was wealthy. And then 2, because people thought he was wealthy, he used to jump into conversations with random. So I think there was a certain man who became vice president later, who was there talking, and he was like, "Oh, sir, I heard you had complained about this problem. I can help you with this thing." Now, because this guy had always seen him there, he assumed then this person must be connected. And because there was a problem that existed and he had a solution, he plugged himself in. And now the guy has a lot of money, made a lot of money from that deal, and kind of skyrocketed his business. Now, the point is, we're using that illustration, and this is a real life illustration. You have to get yourself in the room. You have to get yourself in front of people that can solve your problem. If you're not doing it, then you don't have any right to complain that life is not moving in the direction that you want it to go.
Uwem, I know that we are out of time, but I have a lot of questions. In fact, as you were talking, I was actually looking up some some stats. I want to bring something out. XAI raised 6 billion
On no product.
on a product, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
It took them from July 2023 to now to get to Series B.
Mm-hmm.
And most of that, I would dare say, is driven by the strength of the brand behind it,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because to go raise 6 billion is not beans. It's currently recorded as the largest Series B round ever in startup history.
Mm-hmm.
And you also talked about brand. You also talked about being there. You also talked about the importance of startups to founders to actually be seen as domain experts, right? If they're looking to, especially early stage startups, pre-seed, because from when it gets to seed upwards to series, it's more about, are you making money? Right? But what then does this mean in terms of the context of Africa? Because the truth is, LinkedIn is saturated, Twitter is saturated, and most of the time, breaking through this community or this noise is very hard, especially if you are an entrepreneur operating outside of the big four. If you are an entrepreneur in Nigeria, you'll probably have the platform. If you are in Egypt, South Africa, But if you are in Senegal, if you are in Ivory Coast, if you are in Cameroon, how do you actually break that, and how do you actually build that brand that you're talking about?
Number one, have a plan. Again, if you don't have a plan, you're just going to be doing a series of activities that eventually might not get you towards your goal. So maybe let's take a step back also. What is your goal? Is it to fundraise in the next 6 months, 1 year? Fundraising is hard, so you need to sometimes even overplan, right? Is it to build a reputable brand? You want to be the go-to person, or you want to be the go-to business, say in Dakar, Senegal? Is it you want to have built a product and tested it? What exactly is your goal? If you don't have a goal, you cannot build a plan. Then you take that goal and you break it into a plan. And for me, planning, it's about not necessarily about hitting that goal. It's about what are that small actionable steps that I can take that will get me towards that plan. This sounds more, again, this sounds very much like what, all this in Nigeria, we say aspire to perspire, people say, but it's the reality, it's the truth. Without a goal and a plan, you're not even going to get to where you ought to be. So as a business, say you are, again, the academy use Dakar, Senegal as this thing. How do you get yourself into spaces that people then know that your product exists? There are events organized by Startup Bootcamp Africa. There are many events organized by, all these various people in the ecosystem. How do you get yourself in there? Are you applying for these things? Are you speaking to the organizers? Again, if you're not actively doing the work for yourself, nobody will come and save you. Nobody will do it for you. Again, in rare instances, sometimes people see you and like you and try to do all the things they need to do for you, but you actively have to be at the driving seat of your destiny. So yes, we don't have, unlike in the US and in Europe, where there's so much money chasing so much, well, I won't say very few, I'll say so many opportunities. In Africa, you're fighting with a small pot, like you're literally struggling for a small pot of resources. So if you're not positioning yourself appropriately, positioning yourself is very, very important. You would struggle. In short, I remember telling a couple of young people I was talking to that you will want, you're talking to young people and they say, when I want to be a founder, I want to be CEO. I'm telling them that it is hard because you know what? You are going to be all in one. You'll be your marketer. You'll be the business developer. You must know everything. It is really, really hard.
Yeah.
And you must know a bit of everything. So you must know how to position yourself. You must know how to sell. You have to practice your elevator pitch over and over and over again so that when you meet somebody, remember how, when you asked me, who am I? And I said, I'm that bridge that connects people that are looking to, invest in Africa and those that I practice that thing over and over and over and over again. When I got down, when my wife helped me figure out what exactly is what I was based on my journey and what I wanted to be, I had to practice it and practice it and practice it. Now it's second nature in my head. So you have to put in the work for these things. I understand, again, that for some people in certain markets, it feels like life is stacked up against them. Where the main activities are happening, is far away from you, all those things, which is why, thankfully, the internet exists. How are you also leveraging whatever resource that you have around you to get to there? And the internet is accessible to almost everybody to an extent. So how are you also leveraging on the internet to tell your story and to show people that you are the expert, you are the guy they should be talking to? The last point I'd like to add to this is we are all a work in progress. The person that you think is successful didn't start today. It took him a long time. Don't fall into the fallacy of, oh my God, if I start today, tomorrow it will be great. Man, that's not the truth. You probably will have to do it for 6 months, do it for 10 months. You have to do it for 2 years. But consistency is what ends up winning. If you consistently hit at a problem, if you consistently try to chase your goals, you would most likely get there. Most likely because there are instances where you might have to pivot and change your approach and change everything entirely. But you have to consistently, and it's the same thing in business. If you are building a business, you have to consistently serve your customers in a manner that they are willing to come back, to to come back to try out your product or service and also talk about your business or be your number one brand ambassadors. So how are you, one, as an entrepreneur or a business person, turning people around you to be brand ambassadors of you?
I think that sums it up. But Uwem, thank you so much for being here. We've gone past the hour. I still have about like 3 or 4 more questions. So I'm just going to lend an extra hour from you. But I also know that
Not 1 hour, but let's go.
no, not hour. Yeah, maybe another 5-10 minutes. But my colleague Esther also have some questions. But Esther, I know I have this obsession about the mayor of London, so I know that I've dominated the conversation today. So I'm going to keep quiet and allow you to ask some questions before I ask 2 of my final questions. But it's been such a privilege to be having this conversation with you.
Okay, Owen, thank you so much. You know, the last time we had this session, I wasn't able to join in. And I think I really, really enjoyed when I listened to the replay. Listening to you speak, I see that there's hope for founders who are building with little or no resources. There's really hope for them because um, you've made this journey become very easy to understand. You've made this journey become, there's a human side to the founder's journey. You know, as someone who was a one-time founder, I'm going on second round, but I'm doing basically health related stuff, health tech. And I see a lot of gaps that even after going through one of the best accelerators in the world, I still miss a lot of things, right? So, listening to you speak, I think there is hope for founders with little or no experience and with little or no resources. My final question for today will be largely around these accelerators that you've spoken about, right? I see that some of the accelerators, as most of the ones that I've been privileged to be part of, I'm not going to mention names, are not helping African founders. I'll give an example. The whole journey is designed not by an African, it's designed by someone that's not an African, right? And the experiences, the examples, the whole line of action is not, it doesn't suit our Nigerian, it doesn't even suit Nigerians, talk less of Africans, right? It's not capturing the reality of our ecosystem. Do you understand? I don't want to go into details, but these are some of the, and if you look at most, I don't know about, I mean, I won't say I know, like 5 to 10 African accelerators that are helping Africans. I see that most of them are not Africans, right? They may have Africans in the accelerators, but they're not headed or spearheaded by Africans. This for me is a big issue because again, we are pushed to model our businesses to suit their environment, to suit their ideals, to suit their own realities that is not ours. And already for me, that's doomed for failure. Yes, it works for, I know we're building a global business. I know it's a global brand we're all building, but there are challenges that Africans have that is unique to them, even as they are building. So what would be your feedback as regards to this? Because I've also experienced it, not once, not twice. You know, I've seen that this is a challenge. The things they're asking us to go and do are things that we would have to either copy and paste, we'll be forced to do things that are not just because we want to. The goal is to do them, right? We just do them, but really, in reality, we know that what we're doing is not good. I know you know what I'm trying to say. I don't want to go into the nitty gritty, but how can we close that gap? I think for me, beyond closing the gap, we need more African accelerators that understand our unique challenges, that are helping us build for our markets, that are creating real scenarios that are relatable for us to be able to, you know, make sense of and build. I just want you to throw a little bit more light on that.
You're absolutely correct. And again, this is a recurring topic. I was talking to somebody yesterday, and we both were in an accelerator some time back for investors, and it was the same feel. You know, very American, very larger than life. Experiences were quite different from what we experienced on the continent, but there were lessons that we got there that were very pivotal. So on one end, I'd like to give an advice. Good advice today might be bad advice tomorrow. Bad advice today might be good advice tomorrow. It all depends on context, right? So as a founder, you're going to get all sorts of advice from everybody. You have to learn to discern which one makes sense for you now and which one you should just discard. That's on one end. But to your point on having more Africans running accelerators on the continent, I would say yes, we do need that, but that you also need funding to make that happen. So we need more funding from local banks, from PE firms, hedge funds on the continent. We need more people that are looking to accelerate the ecosystem, actually putting more HNIs, more people putting money into it. But the thing is, some of them already exist, but everybody wants to go after the big name brands. Because in reality, and the truth is, for a lot of accelerators, you actually go there because, apart from what you want to learn, the biggest part of why you go to big accelerators is the brand. You want to be able to leverage the brand. So nothing stops you from leveraging the brand and picking the things that are more relevant to you and dumping the ones you know will not work on the continent. But yeah, what you've said is really, really true. Again, I was talking to a DFI, someone that used to work in DFI, in a DFI, I won't mention the name. He used to be a top guy and he used to lead the Africa strategy. And he told us, see, now that I'm outside the organization, I'll tell you, never collect money from these guys. You know why? They want to plaster their textbook understanding of what running a business in the West and put it to Africa. So when you take money from them, they start telling you what to do, but they don't understand the realities of actually how to run a business or build something, build infrastructure on the continent. So yes, we all know that problem exists. But again, how do you use what exists, or how do you know what is available how do you use that to help you accelerate your growth? That's a question I need you to, and everybody, to answer for themselves. So if you are opportune to join these accelerators, of course, join it. But nothing stops you from either pushing back to say, see, pushing back with data. Yes, I know this has worked in the West, but my core market is here, and this is my goal to scale between Nigeria, Ghana, blah, blah, blah. And in this market, this is what the data is saying. No sensible person will see data and push back. And even if they push back, it's okay. You know you're there to leverage mostly the brand. That's the reality. After you leave the accelerator, I'm not saying join accelerators and don't learn anything. But after you leave the accelerators, you have to always ask yourself, which is relevant for my journey? Which is relevant now? Which is relevant later? Which advice can I start implementing now? Which can I keep and leave till very later when I'm ready for that? Very, very important. But again, you kind of sort of answered it, and I'm echoing it again. We need much more local players involved in this space, more founders that are built on the continent, more money from local entrepreneurs, local HNIs in the system. That way, we are teaching people, the realities. We have people, there's this transfer of knowledge of people that have actually done things in the ecosystem, also teaching people that are trying to build in the same ecosystem. And there's a higher probability that business will succeed that way. Businesses will do well if we have more local players doing that dirty work of accelerating and incubating startups.
Okay. My final question is, what makes a winning startup today? Because before you answer that, has accelerator I was having a conversation. Let me add context. I was having a conversation with Yoande from Hawk, and one of the things I've said, we met up and then we met some founders, and one of the things I mentioned saying is that a founder that hop from accelerator to accelerator is a red flag for me.
Mm-hmm.
By the time you're spending 3 months, 2 months, and things like that in going through accelerators, you're wasting time in building your business. So the question that I wanted to, the question I'm hoping for you to provide insights on is, we've mentioned accelerators, we mentioned the importance of building accelerators in the continent.
Mm-hmm.
How valuable can accelerators be from a program perspective to startups? Let's say
So,
someone let's say someone hear you now and then they want to go start their own accelerator. What are some of the things that they should actually ensure their program comes with to make an investor like you be excited about their startups and bring those startups into your deal flow?
that is actually a very, very good question. I'm having run an accelerator in the past. I'll tell you that there has to be a focus on the business fundamental. What is the business model? What is the unit economics? How are you training founders to build businesses that satisfy those things, right? That's one. On the other hand, we also need more accelerators that are thinking beyond just the practicalities of profit, losses, and all that. It is about governance, how to structure your team, how to recruit people, understanding selling, business development, all those things. And then lastly, I think for me, and interesting, I was talking to somebody on the Barbara network about this yesterday. How are you measuring success? How are you evaluating success? Because if you're measuring and evaluating how successful your founders are or the graduates from the program are, you are going to be refining your program to ensure a higher chance of success for them. So when you've graduated your first cohort or your second cohort, what did you learn from it? What did other investors say about them? How did their business succeed? Did they fail? Did they eventually go on to raise money? Have they struggled to raise money? How can you then tweak your program to increase the chances of success for them? Because the needs of an accelerator or an incubator now will be totally different from the needs of an accelerator and incubator in 2019 or 2020. So I need to see an accelerator that is in tune with the times and is, tweaking their program to ensure that the graduates come out as total as possible, as complete as possible, that the graduates know a bit of everything. And where they don't know stuff, the graduates have the resources to fall back on to help them plug that knowledge gap or that skill gap.
No, thank you so much. Final question, last question. I promise. Very last question.
Final question.
Final,
Okay.
final question. Last one.
CD.
What makes a winning entrepreneur for you in in the current global economy, and what 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 makes a business a winning business for you? What makes the entrepreneur the winning entrepreneur? What makes also the business the winning business for you?
Let's see. For a founder, hunger. You have to be hungry to solve the problem. You have to be hungry to tackle the problem every day. You have to be, and then you'll find out that hunger can be tied to your motivation. It could be, and that's why I tell founders, own your motivation. It could be that, man, growing up, you suffered. Like you suffered so much, and in your life, you have said your children will never suffer. It's a good motivation. It could be you want to make money. Just own it. Don't pretend. So there has to be, it could be that this problem, you hate it when people experience it because growing up you experienced it and you want to solve the problem, right? So there has to be that hunger. Two, humility. There has to be, you have to be humble enough to accept where you make mistakes. Be humble enough to listen to people when they give you advice, even though sometimes you might know more than them. You're humble enough to change direction when things are not working. And then last one, which is tied to speed, horsepower, right? You have to be on the go, right? When you hit challenges, you're down one night, one day, the next day you're up, you're back at it. There has to be horsepower. Like you have to execute. Horsepower also tied to execution. Back to back, you always have to execute on your plan. You don't just have plans that you don't have your napkin that you've drawn up plans or your laptop that you've written notes. You're actually every day finding ways to execute. You're out there selling yourself or selling your business. You're pushing your team. There has to be that persistence. So hunger, humility, and horsepower for founders. And then you mentioned something about team, for a team. Did you?
The business itself.
Oh, the business itself. I think, remember how initially I said business are problem solving machines? It has to solve a problem and solve it better than other people are solving it for a niche market or a group of people that have the ability to pay for it. You're not solving it for one person. You're not solving it for your family and friends. You're solving it for a huge market that has the ability to pay for it. And fundamentally, that's why a lot of businesses fail on the continent. It solves a problem, but for a few people, not for a big market. And eventually, that market can't, even when it's a big market, the market can't pay for it. So if you can solve the problem better than other people are solving it, you can solve it for a large number of people, and you can solve it for a large number of people that are willing to pay for it. I think that those are the kind of businesses that I would always want to invest in or look at.
No, it's been a fantastic moment with you. Thank you so much, OM. It's been a pleasure having you as always.
Thank you.
Thank you,
And
CJ. Thank you,
thank you
Esther.
for allowing us to run your time. I know how valuable it is. We don't take it lightly. For those of you who have been listening to us, we've been speaking to the head of investment for Launch Africa VC, one of Africa, or if not, Africa's most active fund. OM, it's been such an honor. Thank you so much. Until next time, I've been your host and I've been joined by my co host, Esther Richards. Have a wonderful day, everybody.